Thank you so very much for joining us today for this bipartisan discussion about the upcoming Farm Bill in the House of Representatives. Our special guest today is Chairman G.T. Thompson, who is joining us from Pennsylvania, from his hometown in Howard, Pennsylvania, and I cannot thank him enough for joining us here in Ohio. Pennsylvania and Ohio are joined at the hip, and Congressman Thompson will be telling you a little bit more about the region he represents. On your website, you will see on the screen a map of our particular region in the Great Lakes, the largest watershed in the entire Great Lakes system, the bottom half of Lake Erie, and several counties heading to the Indiana border and as far east, way beyond Cleveland, this ribbon of absolutely precious, precious land and fresh water. So this is going to be a friendly discussion. I have to emphasize it is bipartisan, and there are some people who actually get elected to Congress that can work across the aisle. So let's give applause for America for the moment and for all of you who do serious work. And we respect it. And this is sort of our Agriculture Town Hall. We are recording this. We will send it to all of you if you want to send it to some of your friends who couldn't join us today, for example. But I wanted to particularly thank Austin Cerna of my district staff for helping arrange this, and also our federal and state agriculture liaisons, Casey Taylor and John Wilson of USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, and Assistant Director for Ohio's Department of Agriculture, Tracy Intihar. We are going to turn it over to GT in just a second here, but I think what's most important is for him to kind of give us a sense of what's happening with progress on the agriculture bill. Here in our area, we've had very serious crop losses in the last crop year. We also have one of the two largest outbreaks of avian flu in the nation. And there are a lot of questions about that. This is your time to share with him and me your thoughts as we move forward as a country. The average age of farmers in our region is rising slightly. It's over 57 years now of age. I am deeply concerned about the next generation of farmers. And I wanted to urge you all to give us your creative ideas. This is unusual for us. GT is on the authorizing side. That means the persons who write the bill. I am on the funding side, the appropriations committee. So you have both committees that are really important in the Congress related to agriculture. I'm going to, again, thank the chairman. He's got to manage 50 states. Think about this. All these creatures, human and otherwise, that people, our country, and try to come up with a bill to cover it all. You know, we have major water problems in the West. There are a lot of issues that attend to that, and each part of the country has its own challenges. What makes GT so great, in my opinion, his agriculture in Pennsylvania is more like ours. It's not California agriculture, which has often dominated legislation in farm bills, and life is changing in the Americas, and we have to adapt, and I don't have to say that to any farmer. You already know that. After he finishes his remarks, here's how we're going to proceed. We have many questions that were handed in ahead of time. I'm going to quickly read two questions that GT will attempt to answer, and then we will open it up to the floor. We'll take a couple questions, then we'll go back to two questions that were submitted early. I hope that's okay with everybody. And again, GT, thank you for joining us. If he can figure out how from Hudson, Pennsylvania to get the video to work, maybe that means we need more broadband. I don't know. But he's on voice right now. You all know what that's like. And GT, thank you so very much. I hope you're putting a picture up of him on the screen for everyone. So GT, please make your opening remarks.
Well, Marcy, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Excellent. Well, Marcy, first of all, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I am greatly appreciative. I apologize for the video thing. I have figured out what it was. This is a brand new laptop, and I don't have the password in there for my home Wi-Fi. And quite frankly, my wife's not home to tell me what it is, and I don't remember. So But it's okay. I got a face for radio, so this is just perfect. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to be able to join you and all the folks there in Ohio. What a great state, as you mentioned. I mean, we share so many similarities in terms of commodities. Both states, Ohio and Pennsylvania, agriculture is our number one industry. In fact, it's our number one industry throughout the entire country. And it is the industry that, that provides food and fiber and energy, or put another way, is one that feeds, fuels, and clothes every American citizen. And quite frankly, a lot of people around the world when you look at both our trade and humanitarian assistance. And so, well, first of all, I'll just start real basic. My definition of American agriculture is science, technology, and innovation. And I'm really blessed to be able to serve as the chair of the House Agriculture Committee. This is it's a great committee, very bipartisan committee. We tackle the problems that are facing not just rural America, but quite frankly, because nutrition is within our area of jurisdiction. We do a lot. I can talk a lot more about that as we go forward in terms of the nutrition title. And I'm going to stay focused just on the Farm Bill today on this call, but we have a few other things we do, like cryptocurrency and some other things that surprise people outside of the Farm Bill. Let me just start with reviewing how we got to this point. Our farmers have been hurting. I mean, I don't know of a time in history, maybe going back to the Dust Bowl, when our farmers were in more desperate straits with low commodity prices and high inputs prices, where we had a trade deficit. Normally there's a trade surplus when it comes to agriculture, but we're carrying a 46% trade deficit right now. We have tools, especially our chemical tools, that our farmers have not been able to get access to. We've had just challenging times, to the point where, and this is probably not new news to anybody that's on this call because of your interest in agriculture and your involvement in it. But we had farmers and ranchers who basically, when they went to their lender, whether it's Farm Credit or a community bank or a credit union, they were pretty much told that many of them, that they weren't going to be able to receive the credit that they needed in order to afford to plant a crop or raise a herd or a flock here in 2025. And that last quarter of 2024, it just was not looking good. And so, we went to work and really advocated for a financial, based on the financial stress, some economic assistance. That's not something we normally get for farmers, and frankly, it was not easy to get. But at the end of the day, we were able to, in a bipartisan way, include $10 billion into the end of year, or the CR, continuing resolution. That, like I said, not typical, but absolutely needed. And so I was very pleased. And the reason we were able to do that was because of you. Because of the, I've never been so proud of this industry. I got a call probably the third week in December, and it looked like they were walking away from of doing this. That any farmer agriculture assistance was going to be left on the table, wasn't going to occur, and that was unacceptable. And so I worked significantly with Senator John Bozeman, who's a ranking member in the Senate Agriculture Committee. He's the chairman at this point, and we rallied the industries, all the commodity groups, uh, everyone that was involved in agriculture. And it was because of American agriculture standing up and flexing its muscle, reaching out to the members of Congress. I have to tell you, within 48 hours, the leadership on both sides of the aisle, the feedback from them was not only were they going to do this, but this was the number one priority for this end of year continuing resolution. And so I'm just asking that you stay limber, because we're going to need you again to get this farm bill across the finish line. So thank you for that. Some things have changed since the 118th Congress. The 117th Congress. So from 24 to 25. And some of his leadership changes. I'm really honored and thrilled to be working with Angie Craig. Representative Craig is from Minnesota, originally grew up in Arkansas, and is, she's a good friend, a great representative, and a good leader, and enthusiastic about getting this farm bill done. On the Senate side, we had some changes there. John Bozeman is now the Senate chairman, and Senator Bozeman, being from Arkansas, John has always been a close friend of mine. He was a mentor of mine when I was first elected in 2008, and quite frankly, a Bible study buddy. We did Bible study together. So having a close relationship with the Senate chair is a blessing. Senator Klobuchar, also from Minnesota, is dedicated to agriculture. She's focused. She's a great lady to work with, and so that's a huge change for me to have the partners in a really strong working relationship. That's going to speak volumes for getting this farm bill done. Brooke Rollins, as you know, may or may not know, was confirmed, sworn in actually on last Thursday as the 33rd Secretary of Agriculture. She's a Texas girl. She has a bachelor's and a master's degree, agriculture related, from Texas A&M. Was a FFA, National FFA officer. Her kids are involved in showing cattle like she did growing up. And she's also, because of her past couple positions she's had in the Trump 45 White House, with served as the senior domestic policy advisor to President Trump. And in the interim years, during the Biden years, he was the president and CEO of the President's Nonprofit, or what I call the President's Nonprofit, the America First Policy Institute. And so there is no one in the cabinet under President Trump 47 that is closer to the president than Brooke Rollins, and that speaks volumes of opportunity for us. And so that's one of the reasons I'm very optimistic about this. Another reason is, quite frankly, what we passed out of the committee was some bipartisan votes in the 117th Congress was the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024 was a great piece of legislation policy-wise. We had some disagreements on how to pay for the extra investments that we need to make, around $70 billion. But on policy, I don't think there was any legislation that was at least constructed in 2024 that was more bipartisan. There were 40 measures in there that were just led by my Democrat colleagues. They were great. They helped to put the farm back in the Farm Bill. There were 140 measures that we put in that were led by at least one Republican and at least one Democrat, usually multiple ones. And then a whole host of ones were led just by Republicans. And so in construct, that's another positive. That will be the base language that we're working with right now. Now, I will share with you what I've shared from the very beginning in my leadership on this. 2 years as ranking member, and now 2 years as chairman, that until a president puts her signature on this farm bill, we're always keeping our open-minded in terms of what other enhancements, improvements, refinements that can be made that will better serve the American farm family. And so that's where we're at. We do have 11 new members on the committee. There are 5 individuals that are Democrats, 6 that are Republicans. And so we're also doing a lot of member education. If you've been around a farm bill, you know that it is an extensive piece of legislation, 12 titles. I think this one has been scored out at being about $1.5 trillion over 10 years. Now, about probably 80% of that is 75 to 80% of that is Title V, which is nutrition title. Nutrition title pays for the support for our food banks and food pantries. It funds the SNAP program, which is really important to me. And the SNAP program, as you may know, it's what we used to call for a short time food stamps. That's not what it is anymore. But it includes not just the food security assistance in the form of these benefits that they can use to purchase food at grocery stores, farmers markets, different places like that. It also includes workforce development. So able-bodied folks that are age 18 to 54 right now, they're not disabled, they don't have preschool children at home, they don't have adult parents that are disabled that they're caring for. We've since 1977, we've had a program where they either have to be working 20 hours a week or, quite frankly, engaged in some type of SNAP employment and career and technical education, which we pay for, by the way. That's part of that money. And ultimately, the nutrition title ultimately is a market program as well, because of all those calories consumed, all that food is grown and purchased off an American farmer ranch family, and so it's great for that as well. Time-wise, what I'm anticipating, we have to get this done in the first half of this year at the latest. If we don't, I will be back before leadership in December begging for more economic assistance. Most of our farmers were able to get the credit that they needed because of the $10 billion, but things continue to be challenging and difficult, and so we need to get this farm bill done. And if we do that, we've really made some significant improvement. This is a great bill. The industry loves it. Every region in the country loves it. Not to say we can't improve upon it more, and we're going to be an open process to do that. With safety net program, those commodities are included there. We did really the first investments in that in a generation. I mean, I think back in the 2008 Farm Bill, they actually took money away from Title I for funding for nutrition and a little bit for conservation. But that safety net is so important. Now, I want to be clear, we didn't give everybody the same thing, and we didn't give the commodities what they wanted. We worked hard to give them what they needed, because every commodity situation is different. And you have to take the Farm Bill and quite frankly, the industry as a whole. But some great investments, probably about $50 billion investment in the safety net programs. The other program that's very popular is crop insurance. So we wrote this bill in a tripartisan way. So it's Republicans, Democrats, but also you, the people of American agriculture, and traveled extensively to do it. I've been in 42 states and one territory, Puerto Rico. We probably conducted somewhere north of 115 different listening sessions. And so we really built this based on what we heard that you needed. And we looked at data, and we looked at the science and the math, and that's where what drove us. So the number one need I heard in all those travels that all the members that joined me heard was please protect crop insurance. I felt we could do better than that. So we not only protected crop insurance, we invested in it. So this crop insurance would be more affordable and more functional. It would be hopefully would address maybe some of the disaster situation we get into, so you wouldn't have to wait for assistance for ad hoc funding to deal with disaster. And frankly, we broaden the application. There's a lot of specialty crops out there, significant specialty crops actually. Some states have 400, 600 different specialty crops. Many of those do not have crop insurance. We have incentives in there for the private sector to be able to develop policies, crop insurance policies. We invest in research. We are still ahead of China and the rest of the world in our agriculture, but countries like China are catching us quickly, and that's unacceptable. So we increased our investments there. Our land-grant universities, I think for the first time, we're investing in their bricks and mortar, $2.5 billion in that program. Quite frankly, we need our land grants to be able to attract, land grants like Ohio State, Penn State, to be able to attract the best and the brightest, and also to be able to do the research that we need. We've invested in animal health. We know we've been struggling with things like highly pathogenic avian influenza. We have threats we don't experience it right now, but we don't want it, hoof and mouth, and certainly African swine. There's always some type of threat out there with animal health, and we know today it's which would just wreck our food supply and our economy. But quite frankly, it goes beyond that, because today it's one health. It's soil, plants, livestock, and people, and a whole lot of things in between that. I could obviously with 12 titles, I could talk a long time. But Marcy, I think I'm really looking forward to the questions that people might have, so we can zero in on some of their interest areas.
Well, GT, first of all, it's my understanding you grew up on a dairy farm. Is that right?
Yeah, long line of dairy farmers. Sadly, when my mom's side of the family weren't in this immediate area, and I continued to, weekends and summers to milk and spend time with my cousins on the farm. Here in Howard, Pennsylvania, I live grew up outside the metropolis of Howard. Howard is 600 people, one red light. A lot of my dad's side of the family were dairy farmers here. Sadly, all taken by eminent domain. They lay at the bottom of a lake today because of the building of a flood control project. So I'm a huge fan of private property rights, and I don't care for eminent domain at all. But that's just my family history.
Well, GT is very experienced, and I don't think I've served in Congress a long time, and I don't think I've ever had a moment when there's been a chairman from Pennsylvania, from a place a lot like us, although you drain into the Atlantic, don't you, GT? We drain into the Great Lakes.
My watersheds are the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is in the Atlantic. But I also have, I drain in, believe it or not, to the Gulf of Mexico, because I have my own Great Divide here. One side of that goes that direction, and I drain into Lake Erie.
Really?
Northern part of my district. Yeah,
think about that. All right, so you even know where Lake Erie is. That's one. We got to send you a box of plants and tomatoes. And then Chantel Brown, who's also on your committee, is from Cleveland.
yes.
On the authorizing committee. You mentioned then myself here at the other end of Ohio, draining into Lake Erie, and Angie Craig, who I assume drains into Lake Superior, but I'm not quite sure.
I would think so. I'm not sure. Yeah, you have another Ohio. We picked up. Was it David Taylor? Another proud Ohio guy.
He's new. Yeah. I think he drains into the Ohio River. But the point is, this never happened before. We always had people from California and all these other places. So I want everyone on the line to understand how important this is to our needs. And I'm going to go to many questions here. Now, I think some have been answered. Dave White was with Ag Credit in the state of Ohio, was asking, what will it take to pass a farm bill before the end of 2025? I think you've answered that question already, but Dave, if you have a follow-up, let me know. And then secondly, Joey Warner of Lucas County Soil and Water Conservation District says, are there any plans to help secure funding in the farm bill for urban agriculture? So you might want to say a word about the timing and then urban agriculture, and then we'll open it up for two questions from the floor. If you don't get your question in, we have the chat box on the side. You raise your hand or you put something in there. We will get back to everybody. So GT, do you want to talk a little bit about realistic prospects? You said before June, right?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. We've been working hard to identify pay for. We're not in a position, nor is it appropriate, given the amount of debt that sadly the country's saddled with, to add more debt to the farm bill. Farm bill's big enough when you think about it. What that comes out to, the $220 billion a year, 1.5 trillion over 10 years. The responsible thing to do is define this investment that we need, which is somewhere 70 billion, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, plus or minus, I guess. Yes, and there are some ways to do that. Now, I assure you there won't be any cuts to nutrition benefits. I mean, the media, some of the media anyways, loves to go around repeating that, and it's just not true. In fact, I get offended when I hear that. I love the nutrition title. I chaired that subcommittee in the 2018 Farm Bill, and I recognize that we all have neighbors who are in need from a financial perspective. They're living in poverty, and when SNAP doesn't provide a family everything that needs to eat. That's why we call it supplemental. But we also invest in our food banks and our food pantries, and those are great tools. So it's everything together: the food banks, food pantries, SNAP, and quite frankly, what people can do for themselves, and what maybe what their church or their family can do as well. And but there will be no cuts to nutrition benefits. I think we can find some things in terms of program integrity, to make sure that the program is run properly. Right now, the states, we authorize and then appropriate. Obviously, Congress appropriates and pays for this program. It's federal taxpayer dollars, but the states administer it. And there are some things that, quite frankly, some of these states do that I disagree with. It doesn't have the best interests of the people who need this assistance, and so time-wise, that's the pay-fors is the key thing, and I'm zeroing in on those. I think we're about 90% of the way there, and once we have those pay-fors wrapped up, and it would be disrespectful not to give the new members an opportunity to learn about the Farm Bill first. So Angie and I have sat down and we've said that by the end of June, we need to have this done, and we feel like we can do it sooner than that. If she and I initially can agree on the pay-fors for around, like I said, the $70 billion, and so that's where we're at. The sooner we can do that, the better, because just the challenging times that farmers would have. I should say this too. If I can find the money, I'd really like the Title I benefits to be retroactive to 2024, which would be a real savings grace for the American farmer. On the urban side, yes, there are provisions within the Farm Bill. It was put in 2018 in terms of urban agriculture and promoting that. It's not a landscape program, obviously, because it's urban. You're not going to feed a tremendous amount of people with it, but there might be some opportunities to be able to, to feed some people and more. And I think, to me anyways, the urban program, the real value of it is it gives a chance to connect people back to where their food comes from. One of the best programs I ever visited, I think, was in Sacramento, California, and it was a vacant parking lot, and there was a nonprofit came in, and they used some of the USDA monies, and they covered that blacktop with topsoil, and then they did a program where the neighborhood kids came in and they planted tomatoes and squash and all kinds of vegetables that these kids could actually take home with them. And it's right there in the middle of the city landscape. And so people drive by it, they walk by it. Some people come and walk through it, and I think it has a lot of value of connecting people with where their food comes from. And yeah, it is there. I also think there's opportunities in terms of urban, in terms of science, technology, and innovation. Obviously, as I mentioned, my definition of American agriculture, in terms of climate-controlled agriculture. If you have an old kind of vacant building, even what you're able to grow in these controlled environments. Now, it takes somebody willing to invest in that, but you can. They have projects today that I've seen somewhere in New York. They convert these storage containers into vertical growing boxes, basically, where they grow tomatoes and leafy greens and that kind of stuff. And so there's some real opportunity there as well for some entrepreneurs in terms of an urban setting.
Thank you so much. I'll tell you, I've rigged up this little system in our side yard. I live in a city, not a real populated city compared to New York City, but in any summer when I'm really ambitious, we can get 500 pounds of food out of that space that we give to a lot of our kitchens and so forth. And just takes a little bit of ingenuity to do it with drip water irrigation from the regular city water system. So it's clean water, and it's really amazed me what we're able to do. So I'm glad to hear that, because I think one of the difficulties of urban life is people are cut off from the land, but they have opportunities if we can inspire them. And I think it's a good scout project. I wish we had FFA in every precinct, but we don't. And but I think those farm skills are extremely important wherever you live in America. I'm going to move very quickly to Bob Jones, who has a question. And if any of you have questions we can't get to, just put them in the chat. We will get back to you, and you will receive a copy of this entire discussion. Bob?
My question was primarily around the watershed issues that we're struggling with here in the Western Basin and Lake Erie, and how can we incentivize more cover crop production, whether that's from wheat supports or whether it's tying some type of a tax incentive on a federal basis back to carbon sequestration. Is there anything in the Farm Bill allotment for that?
No, excuse me. Well, we don't. Tax policy is really Ways and Means, so we don't have any incentive thing like that. I think the incentive actually is the large majority of farmers today are using cover crops. And why would they do that? Because financially it makes sense. First of all, those cover crops help to develop, help soil health. It helps to sequester more carbon and puts that carbon down through the root system. Generates oxygen, and quite frankly, your cash crop is your topsoil, that healthy soil. So that if you use cover crops, I believe, and I think the science proves this out, appropriately, you will increase your yield, your productivity overall of your cash crop. Also, I think there may be some opportunities with cash crops. Sometimes we've been we haven't allowed, and this is something I work on. They haven't allowed really the harvesting of those cover crops. I mean, government gets in these silos, and it just drives me nuts. If cover crops has done its job, it's stabilized your soil. If it has resulted in the increase of your soil health and quality, so that you're able to grow more. If it has helped with soil health, be able to retain more moisture, which is important where where some places are in drier conditions. why wouldn't we allow these cover crops to be harvested appropriately at some point, and to be able to be used in the marketplace? And so, yeah, we have lots of conservation programs that are out there that encourage that, and I will say conservation is probably in the best position that it could ever be if we're successful with this farm bill. You know, the baseline on what we invest in conservation, which helps in soil health, is we're not cutting that. It's making a significant investment in that. Now, we know that there's not enough conservation dollars, to meet the need. In 2020, we had about, I think it was roughly 90,000 contracts that couldn't be funded. The IRA dollars for conservation, my goal is to roll whatever's existing of that into the farm bill. That'll be some additional dollars, and those dollars will be put into the baseline. So whether that's around 12 billion or whatever it might be, that 12 billion will be put in a baseline. It'll be there for every farm bill going forward. It's smart to do. And then the last thing I would share with you is a piece of legislation that I had. Well, it's a law today. President Biden signed it in his first December, the end of that first year, and it is the Sustains Act. And the Sustains Act creates a public-private partnership at USDA, so the private entities, corporations, wealthy individuals, who want to get what I call their climate credentials to be able to demonstrate that they're supporting a healthier climate, they can write a check to USDA, and all those monies are required to be used for conservation programs. And you wouldn't believe how many companies have been lined up in my office. You'd recognize some of their corporations' names who would really like to take that approach. Unfortunately, Secretary Vilsack and his crew never got around to getting that in place, which I don't understand. The fact that we could bring private sector money and add it with what we're investing in conservation for things like to encourage the types of practices you're talking about. But anyway, that's in the rear view mirror. Going forward, that'll be one of the first things, one of the next things I talk with Secretary Rollins about is getting those regulations in place so we can start to deposit those checks to be able to support our farmers in terms of conservation practices.
I wanted to just, I'm going to call on Rusty Gable here in just a minute, but while the chairman's on the phone, I wanted to mention, I've been thinking hard about how to help our local farmers. And as I've been asking myself, are there any federal programs where we could do an experiment in one district or two districts? And I look at this watershed map that you're looking at right now on the screen. Here in our region, in the western basin of Lake Erie and the southern basin of Lake Erie, we are unlike the rest of Ohio. Our rivers flow north into Lake Erie, and we estimate in 1 year, just in my district, and when you hear this number, you won't believe it, but in the school nutrition programs, there's a total of at least $700 million that attends to food that is brought into the variety of school districts that we have. There are between 40 and 60. I don't remember the exact number. $700 million. And I've asked myself the question, when I look at these boxes and I see where the food comes from, I'm saying to myself, how do I return some of these dollars to my local farmers? I represent one orchard that has been in touch with the state of Ohio, and we have some state of Ohio officials on the phone right now. But if I could find a way to certify our local farmers to provide some of that food, and some of our food banks to become storage warehouses for the summer or winter months, wherever there's a food shortage, I've asked myself the question, how can we turn this equation inside out and have that 700 million benefit my local farmers? I don't have an answer. I just have the question. But I would just say to the chairman, if you could think about this with me and with members like me, this basin, we can feed ourselves. If we had the will, we don't have to import anything. I go by the motto, what America makes and grows America. And 75% of our vegetables now come in from foreign countries. Yet I see growers here that could take that crop and process it closer to home. And I will give you another shocking number. A grade, when I go out to the schools, whether I'm in Williams County on the west, or if I'm in Lucas County in the center, or Erie County on the east, and I ask the kids, how do you grade the food you eat in the school? You know what they say to me? D. That's the high grade, D. And F. Some of them say double F. So there's something not clicking here. And I don't know, Chairman Thompson, if anybody's ever asked you that before, but I really appreciate your thinking, just on an experimental basis, to try something working with our farmers across these very abundant counties. So I know Rusty Gable has a question, but maybe you can be thinking about that while Rusty asks another question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for letting me on the call today. I guess I got wondering here if we got, we're so worried about the SNAP program, which most all of us are, and I know we've already talked about that. But as things are we're 30 and 40 years behind on some of these programs that are in our current farm bill. If we can keep the farmer viable, which at this point they are not viable. I know the farm bill has a lot of things going with other Republicans and Democrats, but we need to figure out how we can update some of those things. And I know money's in tight supply, but the farmers are hurting, probably worse than they were, like you said earlier, than the Dust Bowl. And come June or the end of this year is just way too late. Some of these things, Marcy's talking about food's exactly the same thing. We're livestock farmers, and the regulations that we have to put up with, we can't make them any tighter. And that's one reason the food is costing so much. We need to figure out a way to keep it as local as possible, whether it's the grains or in Ohio, where most of our grains are going to livestock feed anyways. And so we need to make sure, most of the farmers have already done a very good job on Lake Erie or Maumee River on doing lots of tile stops and waterways and filter strips. We just don't need any more regulations. It's already been done. We don't put regulations on people spraying their yards in the cities of Toledo and Cleveland and all around. We need to make sure we can keep moving forward and make it so all these people can work together instead of point the fingers, instead of forgetting about the raw sewage that's went into the Maumee River the last 30 years.
Rusty, before the chairman answers, I'd just like to say, how much of the pork produced in this region goes into our student food programs or our senior food programs? Or how much is consumed inside this watershed, would you guess?
I would guess at best 50% at this time. A lot of it's going other areas. Maybe it's a little bit higher than that, but we need to make that higher because we're not able to sell directly to schools. There's too much of it that goes across the state lines and it's processed, and then everything has to be so cheap, and they got to cut corners, and I get that, but that's how your food programs are. It's all about keeping the cheap as possible, and I get that, but we all it'd be nice to keep it local as much as possible, so there's not so much transportation, and that helps everybody in our communities, every small community.
Yep, I agree with you. We have one program, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program. And the idea there is to use our local farmers' production. And we have 150 farmers registered for the first program I mentioned all across the region. It's one of their favorite programs. The only thing they hate right now is it went electronic at USDA, and they were used to the coupons, the ones that you hold, So that's a problem. But trying to figure out if there's a way to somehow, I'll mention the one organization, McQueen's, which is a orchard here in Lucas County. They've gone to the state of Ohio and gotten approval for their apples to get into the school programs, I believe. And I can't tell you how long I worked on that one, but I just think we need to look at what we're able to do here regionally. And in Williams County, when I was out there recently, and I'm not telling any secrets here, in the, I think it was the junior high school or the high school, the kids graded the food they get in school D. I was shocked. I was shocked. And I'm going, hey, how do we turn this around? So anyway, that's been running around in my head. How do we fix that? Mr. Chairman, do you want to comment on any of this?
Sure. Yeah, let me jump in there. I think there is opportunities to work with your state legislature. They, to ask them to, give, even just start with a number of days a year when you can bring food directly in where they can obtain food right from the farmer. There's nothing wrong with that. Our farmers, the way they raise food, and it's healthy, and it's good stuff. We also, and this is outside of the farm of the agriculture committee, it's education workforces where we screwed up our school meals. And that was back in 2010, where where they passed a law where they felt it was it would be better to micromanage the school meals from Washington, and they put these strict limits on, and it really hasn't worked out well. It's been a failing grade. I think the students you talked with are absolutely correct. We're trying to fix that. Education workforce needs to look at reauthorizing the school lunch program, and that's the opportunity to do it. And I think within that, Marcy, I believe that there's opportunities for us to really specifically talk about farm to school programs, to do more of that and to expand that. But that would need to be part of reauthorization of the school lunch program. Now there is a piece of legislation that we passed out of committee. Actually, Marcy is a co-sponsor of it, and thank you for that. And that is taking just one part, and that is restoring whole milk and flavor back in the schools. That just passed out of committee with bipartisan votes, and I'm hoping it'll be on the floor here real soon. And there's a great momentum on the Senate side as well. That was just one piece of it. In terms of Rusty, you're right. I mean, for how many years, decades, the Farm Bill hasn't really done a good job of putting the farm in the Farm Bill. I mean, the pressure has been of putting more into nutrition, and I'm not opposed to nutrition, Tyler. Like I said, it's good for people living in poverty. It's great for workforce development, encouraging people to climb up the ladder of opportunity and get one of these jobs that are open out there. And there are more jobs open available today than any time in history, and it's a market. But we have to put the farm back in the Farm Bill, or we're going to be a country that's going to be soon food insecure, which leads to national insecurity. And so we have the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024, and it'll be renamed for 2025. It really does that. We make those investments in crop insurance and research and in our Title I safety nets and in our specialty crops so we need to have the support, and I think we will. But we're going to have to work at it to get that passed here, and I think passed as soon as possible in 2025. Let me just say that the conservation programs we have have been very effective, and I know that people look at Lake Erie and the blooms we've had there, and they like to point their fingers at the farmers, but the farmers have been doing a great job with riparian buffers. It makes no sense for a farmer to allow those expensive nutrients or fertilizer, to run off their field. They need that on their field. And so we have provided tools through the conservation programs to be able to achieve that. And so, I think, Rusty, you pointed out, I mean, we've got a lot of folks in urban areas, suburban areas, or, they're getting their lawns fertilized on a regular basis with no thoughts to run off there. And so there's, I've been the first, I will always stand up for our farmers in terms of the efforts that they're making, and they, there's some that want to put a bullseye right on the back of our farmers whether to call them environmental criminals or climate criminals, and this just couldn't be further from the truth. With the modern practices that we have had, and quite frankly, the amount of carbon sequestered on an annual basis when it comes to American agriculture, which concludes crops, livestock, and trees. There's no industry in the world, and the American farmer that sequesters more carbon, 10.1% more than the 6.1% that they sequester an average of 6.1 gigatons of carbon annually, and that is 10.1% more than what they admit. Our farmers are the carbon heroes, and I think they're the environmental heroes as well. But we don't tell that story well, and we don't tell that story often enough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. We had one farmer in Fulton County with this question, Eric Riker. Have you considered increasing the maximum loan amounts for the beginning farmer and rancher loans?
We are looking at all that, actually, and also we're also looking at the cost share on some of these programs. It used to be 50-50. Making this because we recognize our farmers don't have those that are pursuing these types of programs. Farming is asset rich and cash poor. So we're looking at all that. We're like I said before, on the crop insurance side, making that affordable, not just for new, young, beginning, and veteran farmers, but we need to do that for everyone.
And we had a question, sir, from the City of Toledo Food Policy Manager, Mara Mamani, who asks, are there any programs available that can help support local and regional food systems planning efforts? That kind of fits into that other issue of, trying to bring it back local. And they're asking, are there any programs that can help that?
Well, certainly we have programs that support food banks, food pantries, which are how, our towns of all sizes, large cities, suburban areas, and rural areas. We invest a significant amount of money in those programs. Now, I think the question said planning. Was that right?
She says that support local and regional food systems planning efforts.
Oh, planning efforts? I'm not sure about the planning efforts, quite frankly. Other than a resource I would point to in Ohio would be to reach out to the Ohio State Extension Service. Our extension professionals, that's what they're there for. That's why extension services were created under the Smith-Lever Act, to be that resource to help with, I would call it technical assistance and planning. And I think it's really, my perspective is it's on anyone in that agriculture supply chain, including those agencies are there to be able to make sure that there's food security within their specific areas.
Mara, did you have a follow-on there, or are you okay?
I guess I'm looking for specific resources to help perform a food policy audit, and we're doing research to create a food policy commission of some sort. So hoping to incorporate a lot of community voice in that, including farmers' voices, and we need resources to help support that community engagement. So I guess I was wondering if there are any grants available or any assistance programs to help with planning efforts particularly. But thank you for the extension tip. I definitely need to work with extension closely.
Yeah, start with extension. I will be glad to. I'll go back and research and dig a little deeper. I'm not familiar with anything, but it's not to say there's not some program out there that would help communities with pulling together or planning efforts so that you can that you can appropriately meet those needs because you put the hard work into looking at the actual needs assessment and planning strategies up on how to fulfill that. So I will I'll do a little deeper dive on your question, and I'll let Marcy know.
Right,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
And Mara, also some of our private companies like Mondelez Foods, I don't know that they have a foundation, the Toledo Community Foundation, the Andersons have funds, the Stranahan Foundation. So it sounds like what you're asking for isn't that large. Maybe 3 of them would go together and help you out a little bit to do that as you move forward in your efforts. And I'd urge you also to help the county to do a kind of spruce up their annual county fair. Take that for what it's worth, but a lot of these agricultural companies need to help people see agriculture in this region. It's a massive industry also Archer Daniel Midland and Cargill and the Anderson elevators, they're all around us. We need the alfalfa company up the street here, the processor, they got the silos there, and so there's even some of the railroad companies because of the type of, and the major shipping companies for our grains on the Great Lakes. So there are private companies that care about agriculture. And so I would just throw that into the mix. I've got 2 elected officials here. I don't want to miss them. Senator Paula Hicks Hudson, who's done so much at the state level, former mayor of Toledo, and also the Fulton County Commissioner and retired grain and livestock farmer John Roop. I think that they both have questions or statements to make. Senator? Is she there? Okay, while we find her, I would turn to Commissioner Roop. How are you?
I'm good. Good to be on here with you, Marcy.
Same here.
One of the things and I will dovetail with Rusty, know Rusty well, and we were both livestock farmers, or I was, and he is. Anyway, the concerns we always hear about out here is with the local, we talk about farmers markets and to be able to provide the meat for that. I was a livestock farmer, and the regulations that are involved in doing small livestock, and that comes from the slaughterhouses, abattoirs, and as well as the processing. We have to be safe. There's no doubt about that. USDA's got to be in there. They got to do the inspection and everything. But the economy of scale prevents that new ones almost impossible to be built because of the scale of it. And when you're bringing in a regional, like a bunch of small farmers in there, and they want to take let's say their pigs or cattle in there, they don't own all that. They don't own the whole thing. It's not like the big meat processors. So custom kill is a big thing, and those custom kill places are under so much regulation and have to do it that I think there'd be a great opportunity in the Farm Bill somewhere for grants to allow this. I'm not saying everybody gets one. I'm just saying maybe award a grant so it evens the playing field. So we have a few more of those processors out there, and that will also provide the local flavor that we want to give to the schools and stuff, and know that they have a safe product going in there. And I just think there's some money that could be thrown that way that would improve our local areas, and it would improve our local small farms that are still operating. And quite frankly, that's where our youth are trying to get in, and it will allow them to be able to do maybe their own little livestock thing and still be able to market. And everybody knows that stuff's good stuff when it goes through. It's different than anywhere else. So I think it's a great opportunity, and that would be my suggestion on this.
That's a very good suggestion. I want the chairman to think about that, because when HACCP was revised several years ago, it drove so many of our local processors out of business. And who benefited? I think I'm stating a fact that Smithfield's is now owned by the Chinese. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're down
Yes.
to four major processors in the country, and unfortunately, what drove that was, as Marcy, as you referenced, it was more than just that regulation. It was regulations coming out of government that small processors, mom and pops, largely could not afford to comply with, and so they either went out of business or they were acquired. And today we just have four major processors, two of which are foreign owned. Not a good situation. We do have, Commissioner, I think you'd be pleased with this. We do have within the Farm Food and National Security Act, the Farm Bill, provisions in there to allow expanded opportunities for small processors, actually to be able to sell, even sell across state lines. They need to be safe, obviously. Actually, Representative Thomas Massey had connected with me on that. I'm rather excited about the proposal. What he wanted to do is maybe a little too far, but I think where we landed with the provisions within this Farm Bill, he's real excited about, and I am too. It'll work well for states like Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And so just to let you know, we are thinking in that direction to see what we can do here to, for greater competition. And quite frankly, we need, you can't have production without processing, and there is no processing without production.
And,
Right.
and I thank you for that, because we've gotten so vertical
Yes.
in our thing that we forgot about the little guys that can't keep up with that vertical, and it allows them nowhere to go. And you see that in the family in Fulton County. We see that tremendously. I mean, our everything has gotten vertical, and we've lost a lot of little good farms because of that, and we don't have a chance to rebuild them. If we could help that out, I think you could see a lot of this coming back.
I want to state something because I grew up in a family market where our dad went all around to the farmers and got the best food in the world, and we sold it to our customers. And there was a moment that came, and I'll date myself, but it was during the 1950s, and I was in a cooler here in Toledo, downtown, the old farmers market area, those big warehouses, Smith and Armor, they all used to have coolers there. And the man in the cooler told my dad, I had to be like 7 years old or something, and he told my dad, "Sorry, Cappy, I can't give you the prime meat anymore." And my father, I looked at his face, and that's probably why I'm in politics today, because the answer from the cooler guy was, well, it's all been bought on consignment by A&P. That was one of the big supermarkets back in those days. And then I saw justice. The man in the cooler says, "Cappy, shut the door." And he did. And he went back where all these sides of beef were in line, and he took and he switched a prime to a second cut, and I looked at that, and he says, "Cappy, they'll never know the difference." And so Dad wanted to get steak for many of the families. I mean, these men worked long hours in the mills and everything. And I thought, wow. And that's when I first began to understand what you're talking about as a very young child. And it's only gotten worse. And when we can't get our local product to local markets, something is really wrong in America. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you could hear this little story and find a way to help us in different places in the country where people can do this, help them out. The other thing I wanted to throw on the table, way back when I was first on the Agriculture Committee, we were losing hog producers in my first decade of service, a lot of them. And I said, what can we do to get you a higher value for what you raise? And we worked with the Pfeiffer family over in Ottawa County, and we created sterile hogs. And to this day, the valves in those hogs are being harvested for people who are getting valves put in their hearts here in this community. And I'll tell you, the people who've successfully been implanted with those sterile valves live in Williams County, Ottawa County, Erie County, all the counties I represent. And don't think medicine isn't a part of agriculture. It is. And I think we can do more there. You're the experts. Now we're working on kidneys, right? 2 men have died. They've taken the kidneys. They're from hogs. We're trying to work the medical science side of this. But I think in many of these livestock sectors, we have another possibility working with high medical science, and we have a medical university here in Northwestern Ohio. Just something to think about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for now please comment on the questions and suggestions.
Well, first of all, in the healthcare, yeah, I was in a processing plant actually in Texas just about 3 days ago, and they were taking the veins in the arteries, and they're being used for in the medical area. There was a significant amount of interest from from the medical community in terms of some of the different parts of through that processing,
Just something to think about. Now,
Yeah.
could someone raise their hand if they wish to ask a question? I guess Chris Gibbs with Rural Voices has his hand raised. Chris?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Chairman, for taking the time. This is a great discussion. I'm a farmer in Shelby County. And I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to say that I've yet to purchase the balance of the potash that I'm going to need for this year, particularly because of cash flow issues. I just literally couldn't afford it. And my question is, do you believe that I'm going to be paying higher prices this spring because of the pending Canadian tariffs? Or if I do, is that money supposed to come out of the American Relief Act dollars that have not yet been administered? And who's going to compensate me for that fight that I didn't start? And one further reminder that I know both Congresswoman and the Chairman know, everything I buy is made of steel and aluminum.
Yeah.
May I add something, Chris, before the chairman answers?
Yes, ma'am.
I had a woman approach me from Oak Harbor, and it was last year, and she said, Congresswoman, she's in the bedding plant business, and she said that she had to go to South Carolina, I think it was, to get this special soil. I said, well, why don't we make you the soil up here? I said, got all these farmers. She goes, Marcy, this is a special kind of soil. She said, it's very light, it's very whatever. And she said, it cost me $30,000 more. I said, what? And she goes, yeah. She said, it's so hard to break even. That was last year. And now you're talking about something that is essential to your operation. I said, I don't know why it got so expensive to haul it up here, but it was also more costly down there. So there's something going on in that part of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me touch on a couple of those things. First of all, the $10 billion. One of the first things Secretary Rawlins did when he was sworn in on Thursday, one of the first memos she signed was the basically setting up for the execution, distribution of $10 billion. And her goal was to have that out the door by mid-March, basically. Which I'm pleased with. Last time around, we waited for well more than a year. Some probably hasn't even gone out yet. So that's perfect. If you're referring to potential tariffs, President Trump, I think it's his favorite word, but is tariffs. But tariffs in terms of trade policy, tariffs don't define his trade policy. So he uses it as a tool. I mean, whenever the Colombian Colombian government, first of all, they gave permission to, fly 2 plane loads full of gang members, convicted criminals, rapists, pedophiles, murderers, back to Colombia. When they were in the air, Colombia turned them around, and President Trump said, "That's fine. We'll put a 25% tariff on top of your current tariffs." And then the Colombian president called up and said, "Look, we'll take those people, and I'll send my presidential plane to pick them up." Canada and Mexico, the last threat was not about a trade war; it's about a drug war. I think Marcy, your district's like mine. I'm hard pressed to go into an elementary school, and I really get a chance to talk to these kids. I find that it is shocking how many of them have had a older sibling or a parent that died of an overdose.
Yes.
And so, the president said, Canada, Mexico, you've got to, and he threatened tariffs, the 25% tariffs, and he said you've got to step up and do something, or we're going to put these 25% tariffs on you across the board. And quite frankly, within 24 hours, the president of Mexico, he said, "I'm sending 10,000 Mexican troops to the southern border to help address that." And the same thing for the leader of Canada. They dispatched both troops and technology. When these things come out, I just encourage people to, take a deep breath. Some people don't like when I tell them to do that, but I think that's important because I've watched this stuff evolve in the past. Now we're talking about reciprocal tariffs. I think that makes a lot of sense to many people. If we don't have any tariffs on your goods and they can flow freely into our country, and you put 25% tariffs on ours, well, then it ought to be reciprocal. It ought to be match eye for an eye. And if that gets us in a position to be able to reduce the tariffs on our goods, including a lot of our agriculture. Potash is a really special thing. Obviously, it's a critical mineral that we need. We do need to start to produce that in the United States, but we also need to avoid any type of any situation. So, Chris, let me just say that I will, if we run into a situation where we're starting to see the actual consequence of that, the Agriculture Committee is not going to sit by idly. We will, although we certainly don't have jurisdiction over tariffs. That would be in trade, largely over trade. That's Ways and Means. Although we did double in the Farm Food National Security Act, absolutely doubled what we're looking to invest in the Market Access Program, the Farm Market Development Program. That said, we're going to be leaning in on this, and we will do that with Secretary of Commerce, Jameson Greer, who looks like will be the U.S. Trade Representative. And I've had conversations with Jameson already, even though his confirmation is not complete. And I think I have a pretty good idea who he's going to appoint to be the chief agriculture negotiator for USTR. And it's a good person. The person that's got a lot of credentials and is very, very highly effective, especially with communications and very knowledgeable in the ag space. And so all I'm saying is if you're finding, or anybody on the call is finding some type of situation where trade is really starting to cause harmful consequences, please let Marcy know, and she'll communicate with me, and I will do my best with the Agriculture Committee and my role as chairman to weigh in with the administration on that. Well, I have been very clear with the administration, and I am not a fan of retaliatory tariffs. Unfortunately, agriculture products tend to, no pun intended, to be low-hanging fruit when it comes to retaliatory tariffs. And we'll certainly do our best. Now, here's the other thing: if we need, we'll be prepared. Under Trump 45, we had about $28 billion that we did basically trade, offset the impacts of trade on our farmers. I really don't want to do that again, and I think we will largely avoid that. I think 4 years of dress rehearsal of President Trump 45, 4 years of planning. I think there's just going to be a smarter progression here, but we will be prepared with the Commodity Credit Corporation to be able to assist financially if need be. I'm somewhat optimistic we won't have to do that, and hopeful that it won't come to that.
I know, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You've just been phenomenal to stay with us this long time, and all of you who are participating. If you were not able to ask your question, again, put it in the sidebar, and we will get back to everyone. We will make sure you get this broadcast if you want to share it with other people. I wanted to say one word about those of you who really work alongside of Lake Erie. I am really looking for a technology that doesn't exist. When I was out in Defiance, I went into a business and they had this idea for how we could detect where in the watershed some of these harmful chemicals are coming from. And they had the idea of like a little electronic device that with cells that you would put in the watershed all over the place. And whether it's Maumee, Ohio, or whether it's some old septic tank that's leaking, we could find where it is and it would connect to a cell tower. If there's any way the U.S. Department of Agriculture's research staff could work with us, that sounded like something that might work and not be unfair to anyone, because we've all got all this research going here, 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 and here, but we have not found the mechanism to detect dissolved reactive phosphorus, which is very, very high frequency. Even NASA couldn't do it for us. So I really am begging you. I was shocked when the city of Maumee, did you see the press about that? Has been dumping waste into the Maumee River forever. And the whole town of Maumee is upside down now. None of us had any idea. And so if there are research programs you're aware of or suggestions you might have, we have to protect the water for fish life, for aquatic life, and for human life down the road. And we have to be intelligent. Nobody's more intelligent than farmers. And we will work with all the agencies to do the proper subwatershed work that we need to do in order to filter and so forth from whatever's farm runoff. We're having more water, not so much it seems to me in the wintertime, but we have research stations up around the district. We're trying to do everything, but this research in this particular area, so we're granular in what we do, is very, very important, and I'm always open to suggestions. The last question, Wendy Huntley, if you're still on the line, connecting kids to meals. Do you have a question, Wendy? We ask her to unmute if she is not unmuted. Sorry about that. So she must not be on the line right now. Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you to everyone who's participated. If we didn't answer every question, I will share any additional questions you have with Chairman Thompson. And GT, I can't thank you enough. I want to know, do you want me to bring a box of vegetables from Chef's Garden, or do I bring you bagels from Berry Bagel, or Christie's chocolates from our region? What can I bring you to thank you and the members of your staff who made this possible?
Marcy, we don't need anything like that. I just need a good, solid farm bill vote. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, any parting words?
Just thank you to everybody. Appreciate it. Keep any, I know that the questions, that Marcy will have the questions that folks were not able to ask or have asked, but this is an open communication as well, and I appreciate that. So if there's other things or concerns or questions, or if you can communicate that with Representative Kaptur, and Marcy will share that with me, and I'll be glad to help in any way I can.
I think with your gavel, Mr. Chairman, our part of America will not be forgotten, and I can't thank you enough for that. Not that I don't care about California agriculture, okay, that's all right, or Texas agriculture, but for this region, I think this is a special moment for us.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to join you.
Thank you all very much. You have a good month now. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.